Welcome to the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Austin, and it is my pleasure to bring quality programs to all of you. I am excited, yes, again, to be back here with another amazing participant here. And not only that, she's a very accomplished poet, and I just cannot wait to speak with her today. In 2019, you have an abundance of information from so many people who have stepped up to be part of this program. We're in our fourth year, so make sure that you like, share, and vote for your favorite podcast participant. We have 7 awards up for grabs this year for anyone who is looking to compete for these awards. I'm telling you, it's awesome. If you want to know who won, just check out the 2718 and the 2718 participants, and then check out some of the podcasts that are there on the pages as well. Just in case you did not know, the purpose of the BMWC is to unify people from around the world to share their industry information and their work profession information so we can encourage you to make decisions on what you are learning more about in your industry. There's a lot of information, so make sure you take notes and also reach out to them. So before we get into our podcast platform today, I would like to take a moment to thank our corporate sponsors who are My Financial Home, Evangelism Radio, JNF Enterprises, Sears Consulting, Autism Families Rock, Awakening to Love, Eli Natoli, Kimberly McLemore, True Synergy, and Platinum Financial Services, along with our other BMWC participants who are here making this event a very huge success. See, it's just so exciting right now. I can't even talk, and we're just going to get into this bio. We're going to be talking today to Stacy Dyson, who is a performance poet, playwright, a cappella vocalist. Oh, I love that because I can sing too. Stacy has spent her entire life performing, singing, designing, and producing her way around word of spoken word poetry. She is also the author of 6 chapbooks and 5 CDs of spoken word poetry, and does a one-woman show, workshop, and literacy program design all over the country. One of her sayings is, it's not enough to say, we sing because we want to, we fly because we can. And with all of the different accolades that she has, from participating in the 2000 Colorado Women's Playwright Festival, where she won, and also all of the other venues in which she has performed, she is going to be on here talking today about her accolades. Stacy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
How are you today, girl?
I'm good. I'm sitting out here on the campus of SDSU, and the sun is out, and I look good. I just got to say that right there. So it's a good day.
That's right. You know what? You got to look good. I love it. I love it. So I always start with the first question is to just introduce yourself and let people know where you grew up and what your interests were when you were growing up.
Okay. I am one of 5 girls. And my father was military, so I grew up all over the place. But I was born in a little tiny town near the Canadian border called Moses Lake, Washington. And my interests have always been singing and poetry. I think I wrote my first poem when I was 5. I remember singing to my parents' company when I was 3. So I've been doing this for a little while. Probably the newest out of my triple threat as such is the playwriting. That didn't really hit me until I was, the bug for that didn't really hit me until I was in my mid-20s.
Okay. And so all this time you had all these tremendous and beautiful gifts of, singing and playwriting and all that stuff. Did you engage in just, regular school activities in which you can explore some of those talents?
Not really. It was all so natural to me. I never really thought about it. I mean, I was in choir in school. I wrote poems. First of all, when I was a little girl, I thought everybody did what I did. It never crossed my mind that everybody didn't, sing and create poetry and things like that. What I actually started out to be was a pediatric surgeon. And
really?
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
That is totally different.
Right. And so, I had, my main eye on that, but the rest of the time I was singing and poeting. Again, this was breathing for me, and I didn't really think about it. So when you write those biographies in school, or those I want to be pieces in school, And mine was always, well, I intend to be whatever, the profession of the moment was. I believe at some point I wanted to be a cowboy ballerina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, but I was still going to be poeting. Okay.
Okay, okay. So
Um,
who was your favorite poet during that time?
During that time, I was reading a lot of just everything at that time. I was reading a lot of, especially as I got into my teens, Maya Angelou and Nikki Giovanni and the Harlem Renaissance poets, um, for the beauty and the power of the word. I
Mm,
hadn't really connected what they were doing to social change or social action yet. It was just the way the words moved and moved me. And then
okay.
there were, the songwriters. There was Stevie Wonder, writing these fantastic lyrics that I could plug into. There was all this music and all of these songwriters and all of these poets, and it was like those words hit me where prose did not.
Mhm.
And so, but again, this was natural to me. This was, my natural habitat,
Mhm.
and I always knew that I was going to end up doing something in the arts. It was just I always thought of it as, you know, cowgirl ballerina plus poet, or pediatric surgeon plus poet.
Plus.
And then I got into high school, and I'd been taking
Mhm.
classes as one does, prepping, for
Mhm.
medical school, biology and things. And we ran up against theoretical chemistry. And I studied, and I got extra help after school and just everything. And I distinctly remember I'm working with the teacher one afternoon after school, and she stops everything. She says, "What do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to medical school. I want to be a pediatric surgeon." And she looked me dead in the face and said, "No, it's not going to happen for you." I could not wrap my head
Wow.
around theory. No, actually, it was a blessing. It was like, well, okay, not medical school, fine. Let me find something that I'm a little bit more suited to. And of course, I've
Mhm.
been writing all of this time. And so then I
Mhm.
thought, okay, journalism. And I was just at that point getting into mildly political things and thought pieces about the image and place of Black people and Black women in America. So I thought, okay, journalism, print journalism, because, television and radio journalism, those people weren't really journalists, they were actors. I was a bit of a
Oh,
snob
wow.
about that. And
Mhm.
so I went to the University of Northern Colorado and I studied journalism. I was still writing this whole
Mhm.
time. And so there's one night, I'm sitting there and I had started writing a play, because I had been very, very strongly influenced by For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide. And I was like, well, I can do that. Let me see what I can, kind of like pull on out. And I was writing this play, and this is where the mystical part comes in,
Yeah.
because I'm almost finished, and I heard a voice. I didn't
Mhm.
feel it. I didn't sense it. I heard it saying, "This is what you're supposed to be doing."
Wow.
So it was like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
And I started taking it seriously.
Yeah. It's amazing. I hear this all the time how, people go off in one direction and then they just have this feeling or voice or spirit or something touch them as they're working on something and they realize that this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I think all that time you were getting prepped up for your future playwright and your future, for poetry and things of that nature.
Absolutely. I think sometimes you
Mhm.
just have to get the other stuff out of the way
Yes.
first. Let's face it. If I had gone to my parents, at 5 and said, "This is what I'm going to be doing for a living,"
Mhm.
after they had laughed themselves silly, they would have, thrown a burlap bag over my head and had me deprogrammed. I mean, just
Okay.
this was not the sensible way, the secure way for little Black girls to make a living.
Okay. And
It's
so and so what was your first and foremost project once you had that realization?
mhm.
What was your very first project right after that?
Right after that, I finished the play, and I just kind of let it sit there for a minute. It was, quite honestly, it was more about the completion of it, just to, say that I could do it, see that I could do it, than anything else. And there was a talent show on campus, and so I took along, a poem that I had written. Wasn't really expecting all that big a reaction, but I thought it was kind of cute at the time. And I go ahead and I did it, and I remember, the applause. I go and sit back down, and as we're going back to the dorm room, my roommate says, wow, you must be really, really, pleased and really, really happy. And I said, well, it went nicely. I didn't fall over the words, and the crowd seemed to like it. And she looked at me and she said, aren't you, kind of knocked over by what happened? And I said, well, no, it wasn't, I'm happy with what I did. And she looked at me again and she said, Stacy, you got a standing ovation, which I had completely failed to notice.
Wow.
It was like, I did the poem. I thought people
Mhm.
were standing up because it was a crowded room and I was trying to get back to my seat.
Mhm.
The whole standing ovation part just went totally over my head.
Well, you know what, Stacy? I have to say that I think that's common among people who are like in the entertainment world, particularly singers and those who do poems, because I know that when I performed all over DC, Maryland, Virginia, I don't care what kind of audience it was. It's like soon as I start singing, I don't see the audience. I only
Right.
see whatever I'm feeling, thinking, trying to relay in my words when I'm singing or
Right. You see
whatever.
the energy.
Yes, I don't even see the audience and how they react and things of that nature. I think it's weird. I think I tried to, like, actually see the audience a couple times. It just never worked for me.
It
It's
just
kinda
freaks me
interesting you
out,
say
quite honestly.
that.
It's like, what people? You mean there are people? Oh Lord, what do I
Yeah.
do now? Because
Mhm.
basically, as are most of the people that I've run across anyway, who are poets, singers, whatever, I'm an introvert.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
the idea, I'm forever telling people, look, there are a couple of different me's. There's Stacy, who likes to sit under a tree with her Coke and her Agatha Christie book and, get left alone. There's that me. Then there's my stage persona. That's a totally different person. That chick says and does things that never in a million years would the one under the tree do.
Mhm. It's always
So,
weird like that. That's the creepy
yeah,
part. Because you're not expecting that part of you to shine and things like that. You're just kinda just saying whatever you wrote on the paper, but when people hear it or they feel it, there's just this other connective energy there, and it's
exactly.
amazing how, words I think for me, particularly when I lost my voice several years ago, I didn't know what I was gonna do, right? So I ended up just still using words because I know that words is still something that's universal and people are still touched by that. So I think as long as you have that thing behind it, I think you're going to keep getting standing ovations.
Well, I've gotten one or two, yeah. Uh, but I mean, the recognition is lovely, and I'm most grateful and very appreciative of it. But in the final analysis, the connection, the primary important connection, is between me and the words. Now, the audience is a
Mhm.
lovely secondary
Wow.
sort of a thing,
Okay.
and that's not to say. I mean, that's not to say that I don't need the audience. I need their energy when I'm performing.
Mhm.
I need their vibe. I need to be able to read them. Otherwise, it's not going to be all that good a performance.
Mhm.
Um, when I went through a period, gosh, now about 5 years ago, where there was a very real possibility that I was going to lose my eyesight. And I remember sitting there thinking, but I'll still be me. I can still write. I can still do the words. And that was a
Mhm.
large part of what kept me sane during that, because
Mhm.
that was a seriously scary
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah.
Of the idea of not being able to quite literally see what I wrote,
Yeah.
and learning how to sort of wend my way around that. That was probably the worst 2 years of my life.
Yeah. I can relate. I can definitely relate to that. So with overcoming that obstacle, with
Mhm.
that. You still excel to do your poetry and your singing and things of that nice. Can you speak on some of the playwrights or some of the things that you have written for?
All of my plays
Mm-hmm.
and 90% of my poetry are written for one specific group, Black women. And I did that because every anthology I read, every presentation that I saw, there was always this, 90% of it was about Black men, and the rest of it would be about Black women. I got tired of being the rest of it. I didn't think it was fair. I didn't think it was representative. And I wanted in some way to say, this is who we are. And I still do catch flack for that. But the pure fact of the matter is as I had a mentor in college who told me, you can only ever write really well about what you know. I have absolutely no idea how to be a Black man, but I'm very, very good at being a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lucky enough, blessed enough, able enough to be able to sing our songs, because there are people in the world who can't or won't or don't know how. I'm lucky enough to have enough of a teaching gift to be able to teach other women how to put their voices into the wind, because that's necessary, that's needed. Civilizations survive because people tell stories,
Mm-hmm.
because people sing songs. There is no civilization that has ever survived where that part of art was not present and required. And so it sort of became my mission to speak up to that circumstance. Now, the older I got, the
Mm-hmm.
more inequities I was seeing, the more just a lack of fairness I was seeing, the more joy I was seeing in who we are and how we transition through the world. I
Okay.
was seeing all of these different faces.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, I have to write about everybody, or as many people as
Wow.
I can. So the plays, five and variations of five are my lucky number. So all of my plays have 5 characters, and they're all women.
Okay. Wow.
And they don't just talk to each other, they talk about themselves. They tell stories on themselves. They fuss, they fight, they cry, they surrender truths that they may not have surrendered before, because I feel safest when I am in a group of women. I feel like I can say anything. I feel like I can be who I am, as opposed to what society is looking for, or what the dynamics of a mixed group look for, or any of that. So
Mm-hmm.
the poetry kind of follows along the same thing. It's just a little bit more intensified. It's one voice usually. And it's not always about me, because I, quite frankly, am not all that fascinating a person. But my sisters are. The
Mm-hmm.
women of the world are. And they have stories to tell and songs to sing and these mind-blowing truths and prophecies. And so I try and get those out into the wind as much as I can.
Okay. And so are you doing these plays and poetry in your area, or are you kind of traveling around and spreading this information out to the universe in other countries or other cities?
The plays so far have just been, wherever it was, I was lucky enough to get them put on. I had the one in college was a reading performance, and that was put on by the university. And the one that won the Colorado Women's Playwriting Festival, that one was put on in Denver. The playwriting is something, there's a third play coming. I've been saying that for the last 10 years. There's a third play coming. The poetry is pretty much wherever I can get to.
Okay.
I don't understand the concept of vacations,
Mm-hmm.
but if you tell me, hey, we've got a gig for you and you got a couple of days on either side of it, then yeah, I can work with that.
Okay.
Um, So as much as and as many places as I can
Mhm.
perform or do workshops, I do.
Awesome.
The 2 years, like I said, losing my eyesight,
Mhm.
and the years after that, just trying to
Mhm.
pull things back together, that cost me. Because you know as well as
Mhm.
I do, you're only as good as your last show.
Exactly. Oh my
And my
goodness.
last
Yes.
show had been, a bit, I think, for the almost 3 years that it took
Mhm.
for my doctors to get my eyesight problem straightened out. In those in that time, I performed maybe 10 times,
Wow. That's
maybe.
still a lot. Yeah, that's
It's
still a
not a
lot.
lot when you're used to having maybe 3, 4 weeks out of the year where you're not performing.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so,
Well, I
because
thank
it,
goodness that your eyesight is better. Thank goodness for
yeah,
that, and thank goodness that that you are pushing through and everything. And you also have author of 6 chapbooks and 5 CDs of spoken word poetry on top of
yeah.
everything else. How did you get the energy to do all of these
How did I get the what?
extra, the energy and the time? You know.
Well, I'm a huge fan of caffeine and dark chocolate with almonds, so there's that. Mostly it was just because I was just, when I started doing road time and going to different places, just about every spoken word artist, every poet had a chapbook, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm down with that. Easy sell, you know, quick money to finance the rest of the trip or whatever. And then I was doing a performance, and I had just finished. And I was, doing my merchandise spiel. And I remember very distinctly a young man in the back of the room said, "Do we get the voice with that too?" And it was like, oh, okay. Let me think about that for a minute. And I was lucky enough to get together with a friend of mine who had gotten into um, being a producer for spoken word. And he and I did 5 albums together.
Wow.
Um, and then and then, like I said, that was when the problem, after the last one, that's when the problem with my eyes started. And so in the meantime, but when I came back and I'm like, Tony, I'm ready to get into the studio again, he had retired and started on a different career.
Oh
So,
no.
right now I'm looking for somebody else who can do it. But modern
Mhm.
technology being what it is,
Mhm.
if I want something, for a quick sell and not something, that's like major league polish, I can do that on my laptop. Or
Okay.
or go
Well.
into a little, $40-$50 an hour studio and do it. But the
Mhm.
big thing has always, with me, is about live performance. I want to be able to see my audience cry or light up or laugh or
Mhm.
whatever. And so the chapbooks and the CDs are nice. And just because business being what it is, it's necessary for people who want to remember the voice, want to remember the words or whatever. But the bread and butter is the live performance. That's what keeps me
Mhm.
breathing.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that anyone who is listening to this podcast who can align with what you're doing, they need to click on the button on your page and connect with you so that you can get back in the studio and work with other people. There are so many folks out there that's doing poetry and all kinds of music, different type of ways and everything. So I'm going to ask if you can just share maybe like 3 tips of someone who is doing poetry, first of all. What is it about poetry that they just have to be able to do in order to just really come off and perform? Because there's a lot of poets and songwriters out there, but sometimes they
Mhm.
just don't have the way. And so, in your professional opinion, what are maybe like 3 things that you can share for someone to have a really good poetry?
As far as creating it, the first thing, the paramount thing, is that you have to understand that the line between music and poetry is artificial. It's all music. You have to understand how music flows, how it moves, what it does. Because if you don't understand that, you're not going to be able to create anything worth reading or performing. The other thing is that you have to make a very, very definite decision about how you're going to put this out into the wind. Is it going to, live on paper? Is it going to be read? How is it going to be out there? Because that's going to impact what it is you're writing and how it is that you're writing it. That's going to change everything from the passion level to the nuance level. And the third thing is, and probably, yeah, even though it's third on my list, the most important thing is make sure you want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you understand what this is going to cost you, because if you're doing it right, it will cost you. It will cost you sleep. It will cost you time. Especially with my sister girl poets that I know, with some of them, it has cost relationships. This is not something for the faint of heart. If you are not prepared to enjoy one moment, in exaltation one moment, and in object pain the next, don't do it. If you are looking for something secure that will, provide for you in your old age, don't do it. If you are not sure that this is where your heart lives and how your spirit flies, don't do it. Go into business law like your mama wants you
to. That's it.
You will be, you'll be just so miserably unhappy. There are times, that I just sit there and just despair, because a word isn't the exact word I want, because the nuance isn't what I want. There are times when I am in tears because I am so happy, because I saw an audience spark to everything that I'm saying. There's that feeling of joy and terror you get when you know that something is absolutely right and you're about to spring it on the world. So you have to be ready for all that. Because it's not, you don't get, there's no course you can take for this. This is very, very much a leap of faith. If every poet is a Baptist, okay, total immersion. There's no, sprinkling the water on the forehead. You're in, and that's all there is to it.
Well, I kind of want to add one thing also to the list that you have there, is that you got to be prepared for the disappointments too. Because if you are not speaking, or your poets is not geared to the right audience, you will get disappointed. And I'm like going to repeat after Stacy, don't do it. Make sure that your poem or your song or whatever it is you're doing aligns with the type of audience you have there. Because if you are speaking to the wrong people, they're not going to understand what you're saying, how you feeling, what the words mean. They're just not going to get it. Don't do it.
And that, that's the where the integrity of the piece comes in. If you don't believe what you're saying, why should anybody else? If you're not putting your whole heart and soul into what you're saying or writing, why should anybody else invest in it? And so if you have done that, if you have done those things, and you are sure that the integrity of your piece is definite and correct, if other people don't get it, as long as it sings to you, it still sings. And so if your audience is, if you come upon a time or a circumstance where the only person who's understanding what you're saying or getting what you're saying is you, that's okay. First of all, it's not going to last forever. Other folks will figure it out in a minute. But, as you say, don't get disappointed by that. Don't stop because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Stacy, do you have any events coming up in the next few months where people can check you out? And if so, where?
Right now, I actually just finished a major show. It's a show I've been waiting for about 5 years to put on. And that was when was it? Week before last. I'm still recovering from that one. But the next show that's coming up, I'll be at the Encinitas City Hall doing a performance, and that's on April the 6th at 6:30 p.m. Encinitas, California. The next one will be, let's see, I'm doing a women's conference, empowerment conference in Las Vegas in July, and can't give you too much more detail about that, although people will be able to find out about it on my website. We're still settling the details on that one. Right now, the big push is getting the new, I wrote a bunch of new material for the new show, and so now the big push is getting that onto a CD and into a chapbook.
Okay, absolutely. And so what is your website and contact information?
Contact information is, I mean, you can hit me on Facebook. You just go under Stacy Artist Dyson, boom, there I am. The website is a little bit long, but easy enough to find. It's www.stwinterrains.webs.com. The big project, another big project that I'm working on, is a women's online writing and performance class. That's called FireScribe. And you can find the information on that at www.wickedhotwords.com.
Okay, and I have one final question for you.
Sure.
With everyone that is listening to your podcast, what do you need to thrive and keep doing what you're doing? What do you need?
On a very, that's a two-pronged answer. On a very real level, I need what every artist needs. I need support, financial support, audience support. On a more spiritual level, I need you to open your hearts, open your ears, and stop talking for a while. Listen. People will say things, and your heart will hear things that will surprise you.
Awesome. So everybody, you have it, Stacy Dyson here on the BMWC podcast, just so full of passion and words, and as she eloquently says, do what your mama asked you to do when you went to school, unless you want to do poetry or you want to do singing. Do whatever your heart desires. Do whatever that fulfills you, because just as we said, music is fluent, music is everything, and it's very universal. So if you are an artist and you are a singer or you're a poet and you're listening to this podcast and you would like to have more questions, please reach out to Stacy Dyson and see if she can help you. I can help you. And we also have other people in the entertainment industry that can also help you. And if you like this podcast, please like, share, and vote for your favorite podcast participant. And also check out the last prior years and everything. So Stacy, thank you so much for being on the podcast and interviewing
you. Thank you.
It was such a pleasure and listening to you. And I'm so inspired, about your ability to write words that just means a lot to me, which to me is music, poetry. It's all the same, like you said, but that's just how I feel. So I hope everybody feels the same.
Thank you so much.